Hi, everyone. This is Joe Brewer here. I was planning to attend the session for our Barichara Regenerative Finance Lab live, but as you can see, we're in a change of location. We came as a family to spend a couple of days at the beach in the Caribbean here in Colombia, and I've discovered that the internet here is just not reliable enough to lead the session, and I didn't want to cancel again. So what I'm doing instead is I'm recording this video where I'm going to basically give the presentation that I would have given live and upload it and then share it with all of you so that you can see it and have discussions about it and share it with your friends, because these Regenerate Barichara sessions are public. So you can share this video later. Today, what I want to talk to you about is a very important piece of focus of work for what we're doing in Barichara, Colombia, that is related to bioregional regeneration everywhere that's connected with our work in the Design School for Regenerating Earth. And that is, how do we create processes that give rise to community-led decision-making and structures and patterns of governance based on intelligence and information within a bioregion? How does a bioregion organize itself to gather knowledge about different initiatives that are contributing to regenerative education, to the creation of a bioregional learning center, to the restoration of ecosystems and the restoration of native ecology, to cultural healing processes and decolonization, to the prototyping of regenerative economic models, and more, whatever else the people in the bioregion would like to do as they're regenerating their own territory. And so what we've been doing in Barichara, Colombia for the last 4 years is we have been in a process of creating a living laboratory and an ongoing and increasingly rich and increasingly manifested model of bioregional governance. And so what I want to share with you today is something that happened at a meeting earlier this week. On Monday, all of the founders of our Territorial Foundation, which is called Fundación Barichara Regenerativa, all of us gathered together with facilitation from some of the leadership team at a support organization called Territorial. And together, over the span of 9 hours, we explored several key questions and made decisions together about how we would set up the governing system for bioregional regeneration in Barichara. What I'm going to do today is show you the model that we've created. And this isn't a model just like a diagram. It is the way that we are manifesting our work and organizing it in our community. And what I'm going to show you today is partially created. And part of it, I would say over the next probably 2 years, we're going to be doing a massive amount of work to enable us to continue to create what I'm showing to you today. So this is a multi-year process to create what I'm going to show you. I'm going to show it to you in about maybe 10 minutes. So I'm going to show it to you conceptually, but I just want to be really clear that this is not just a diagram for a presentation of something we might do. This is something we've already been building for 4 years, and that we're in the middle of the process of continuing to create in all of its richness, in all of its complexity in the real world. So, are you ready? I'd love to show it to you. Here we go. Okay, so today we're going to talk about creating territorial governance in Barichara. This is the Barichara update number 30, and this is part of our regenerative finance lab in the Design School for Regenerating Earth. So if you like what we're doing here and you're not a member of the Design School, please join us. So let me start by explaining what's going on in this image. In this image on the left is Natalia Ortiz, and on the right is Margarita Higuera. And on the background, written in Spanish, is the model that I'm going to talk about today, where there's a Consejo Consultivo Territorial, which is a territorial advisory council, a Junta Directiva, which is like the executive committee or the executive council of a nonprofit organization. There are green boxes, which represent multi-stakeholder groups in the community. That's up at the top. And down at the bottom are blue boxes, which represent key organizational capacities of our territorial foundation that we either already have part of or that we need to hire people and form a team and put into place. And so what I'm going to be talking about is what's on those pieces of paper on the wall. So let's do it. This was us on Monday just 4 days ago, meeting at Casa Común, which is a gathering place for community work for all of our regenerative efforts in Barichara. And you can see several members of our Territorial Foundation are gathered here. There's Tanya Falconer there on the left, an active member of the design school, and there are many other people in this image that appear in many of our presentations about Barichara because these are the people who have been leading our work throughout the last few years. And we met to talk about the model I'm going to show to you now, which is this. This is the model in Spanish. And so I just want to name that the green area where it says Modelo de Gobernanza Territorial. This is our territorial governance model that is actually created by gathering multi-stakeholder groups in different thematic areas and then creating a general assembly, or what we're calling an advisory council from the community. And then in blue, Modelo de Gobernabilidad de la Fundación Territorial. This is the governance model of our Territorial Foundation, where we have key aspects of our foundation that need to be organizationally constituted to be able to interact with these community processes from the territorial model of governance in the Advisory Council. And as they come together and interact, they begin to evolve a system of governance at the territorial scale for regenerating our bioregion. And so I'm going to show you all of this in English, but I just wanted to show you the diagram that Natalia Ortiz created in preparation for our meeting on Monday, and here it is. So now let's look at this in more detail. As I said, there's a community council. This community council is representatives of key regenerative initiatives in our territory that come together through the 5 thematic areas that we've talked about in previous webinars that are organized into 4 key groups, where 2 of those themes have been brought together. And so these groups are an ecosystem restoration work group. So this is people that are thematically focused on the regeneration of natural ecosystems. So there are many kinds of people doing watershed restoration, soil restoration, protection of endangered species, the restoration of the native forest, and so on. And all of that work that takes place across our territory, people will be invited to join this work group on restoration of natural ecosystems. But there's also a group, one that I've been leading, on regenerative education. There are community groups like our Waldorf School, Sueños del Bosque. There are lots of different workshops and community projects and student groups and community groups that do regenerative education. So this is the thematic area for bringing those stakeholders together to explore how do we integrate and create shared agendas around regenerative education for our territory. Then there's cultural regeneration and territorial healing. These are 2 thematic areas of our foundation that are brought together in one. Cultural regeneration and territorial healing have to do with things like getting rid of the poverty mindset, decolonizing our minds, healing cultural traumas, building up our capacities to trust and work together. Addressing issues like domestic violence, helping children to have healthy social and emotional development, which heals the relationships in the adult generation and the children, and so on. So there's a lot of different groups that work on cultural regeneration and territorial healing, and they can come together in this group. And then the 4th group is the regenerative economy work group. And the regenerative economy work group is all of the people working on alternative models of economics to enable us to manifest in an economic sense all of the things we're trying to do across the territory. Now, the way that we form this community council is we invite 2 representatives, which is community leaders working in each of these thematic areas from each of the 4 groups, to have 8 representatives in total. And these community representatives, oh, at least that's so beautiful. Thank you. These representatives are people who are collaborating around bringing together the different initiatives in their thematic area and creating a territorial vision so that we can have an emergent territorial vision for restoring watersheds and forest. We can have an emergent territorial vision for regenerative education, for cultural healing, and for creating an alternative pathway of economic development. And having 2 representatives from each of these work groups join the community council. Each work group will also have a person who is assigned, who steps forward and leads the creation of a regeneration fund. So there's a Regenerate Ecosystems Fund, what I've been calling the Restoring the Rivers Fund in previous webinars as an example of this, the Regenerative Education Fund, a cultural healing fund, and a regenerative economy fund. And what we're seeing here is these red dots represent a person whose job is to come in and participate in these groups and to ask the different initiatives, what is it that you're working on? What are the capacities you have? What are the synergies that are possible between your efforts? What is it that you need? And then from that mapping process to create a collaborative budget. So there's a collaborative budget for each of these 4 thematic groups with a person whose task is to integrate that knowledge into a coherent thematic vision for each of the groups. Now, these 4 people also join the community council, which means now we have 12 representatives of the community in relationship to the 4 thematic groups. And what this does is it creates a community council that is gathering and synthesizing knowledge from a much larger collection of regenerative initiatives and community processes that then come together into this council to create a collective vision for the territory as a whole. And so this community council, as I said, this is the place where territorial governance is being prototyped. Well, this community council needs to interact with our territorial foundation. So one thing that the community council does by gathering the information in the way that it does from the 4 different work groups is this curating an emergent collective agenda for the territory directly from community leaders who are doing regenerative work in the territory directly themselves. It's also gathering that community knowledge into a collective, synthesized understanding at the territorial scale. What is happening in regenerative education? There's representation of all the initiatives doing that work. How are we restoring the watersheds and the forests? There are different initiatives with representation in the thematic groups who then bring that knowledge in an integrated manner into the community council. And with those different funds, they also have shared budgets and shared agendas organized around a collaborative budgeting process, which means that the coordinators of the community funds translate that knowledge into action plans. So there's an action plan for the Regenerative Education Fund that is brought to the Community Council. There's an action plan. What is the agenda for the next year? And what are the resources that are needed? And how can this create synergies between the groups that are restoring the watersheds? That would come from the Regenerating Ecosystems group in their fund, and so on. And so these coordinators of community funds are translating this knowledge into action plans, priority areas, strategies developed directly by the leaders of the initiatives themselves. And all of this is sharing what is needed by the thematic groups at the territorial scale to then bring this to the executive council. The executive council is an administrative group within the Territorial Foundation. It's a small team, and this team is tasked with implementing what the community council requests, which is to say the executive council might ask, well, from the 4 different budgets from the 4 thematic groups, maybe you need $1 million to be able to do all the work you're trying to do, but we only have $500,000, so we don't have enough to fund everything. The executive council makes strategic decisions informed by these kinds of operational constraints, and then makes a counter proposal and goes back to the community council and says, well, based on what we see that you've shown us, we have this many resources, and now we know our marching orders. We need to go and gather more resources to try to meet the agenda that you have. But in the meantime, this is our priority for how we recommend allocating the resources that we have. And this initiates a bi-directional conversation where the community council and the executive council come together and create shared agreements about the priorities. What should we invest in with the resources we have if we can't invest in everything that the community is trying to do? And this creates a kind of representation and partnership in telling stories, creating shared agendas, creating joint budgets, making decisions about the allocation of funds, and having direct accountability to the community leaders themselves as these decisions are made within the Territorial Foundation. Now, for all of this to work, the Executive Council needs to be able to make these informed decisions. And that means the Executive Council needs key operational capacities. Oh, I like that one. Thank you, Elise. One of the things that the Executive Council needs, and this is on the organizational side, we have a foundation. Our foundation needs to do general coordination of the foundation's work so that the Executive Council can function. But what are the key things that we need to coordinate within our foundation? One of the things is we need coordination between the regenerative initiatives in the community and the donors and investors out in the world. Maybe we're receiving funding from a network of donors in the United States who care about our Waldorf school. So we need to have a part of our foundation that is working with the community and working with our Waldorf school or the other initiatives in our territory to say, please share with us the stories of what's happening so we can communicate it to the donors. Please share with us how you're meeting the promises of what you said you were going to do before you got the resources so that we can create this feedback loop and direct relationships with those who are supporting you to do this work. So part of the foundation is focused on answering the question, are the resources being allocated in the way that the community said, in a way that honors an agreement of trust between those who are investing in these outcomes and those who say they're going to create them? Because this is a key part of the integrity and the efficacy or the effectiveness of our Territorial Foundation. So we need someone, at least one person or a team, that's managing these relationships with community initiatives and with donor and investor networks. Another thing that our foundation needs is the coordination of international partners and supporters. This is the role I happen to be taking in the foundation right now, because I'm the person who has the most international relationships. And I do storytelling of this is the story of Barichara and its regeneration at the territorial scale. To be able to tell that story, I need to have knowledge of lots of different initiatives in the community. I need to have up-to-date understandings, and then I can build those relationships. Well, at the scale of what we're doing, I will eventually become a bottleneck as one person. So our foundation needs to build the capacity to coordinate these international partnerships on an ongoing basis to maintain these healthy relationships and mobilize external resources that serve the needs from these sovereign requests, the priorities and strategies led by community groups in the territory. Also, we're creating a bioregional learning center, an ecosystem of knowledge, research basis, all kinds of knowledge that's being built as an ecosystem of knowledge, which we talk about a lot in the design school. So we need a special group within our foundation that focuses on building up those capacities. For example, right now, we're coordinating the hiring of engineers who specialize in geographic information systems to create a database of georeferenced information that can help us to coordinate our ecosystem restoration work. And that is part of our bioregional learning center. And there's a group within our foundation that is coordinating that process. That kind of work is held operationally within our foundation. And then finally, we need just the administration of the foundation itself. Money comes in, let's say $500,000 comes into our foundation. Who's setting up the budgets? Who's signing the contracts? Who's doing the reporting back to the donors? Who's doing the financial tracking for tax purposes within Colombia or with international partners like fiscal sponsorships or nonprofit partners in the US or Europe? So we need an administrative team that's handling finance, contracts, legal reporting, accounting, monitoring, and evaluation, and that is part of our foundation. So our Territorial Foundation is doing all of this work as the general coordination of the foundation. Now, right now, we're doing this work with a small number of people on a mostly volunteer basis. What we identified on Monday was the number of people we need to hire and the kinds of profiles of those people we need to be looking for so that now that money is starting to come in at a larger scale, we can start to build out this team. Now, what you can see from this is that this web of relationships that goes from the thematic groups and the 4 regeneration funds into a community council, this is a web of relationships that is able to give birth to patterns of governance at the territorial scale from within the community, from within local actors. And this web of relationships within the Territorial Foundation supports the governance of the Territorial Foundation as a robust and effective organization so that it can provide the supports that are needed to the community governance process. And when you bring them together, they form this evolving system of interactions for the regeneration of the territory. And so as you can see in what I've said, we have leaders of specific regenerative initiatives coming together into thematic groups. We have a member of each thematic group who gathers information and integrates it into joint budgets and shared agendas. Then there are representatives from these 4 thematic groups who join a community council along with those who are managing these funds and these budgets so that we have a shared vision of our agenda, our strategies, our priorities, the needs of individual initiatives, the opportunities for them to synergize with each other at the territorial scale, as well as action plans and budgets for fundraising or for mobilizing resources. All of that's happening in the community, and it's coordinated with the operational capacities of our Territorial Foundation, that is creating relationships and maintaining relationships between local regenerative projects and donor networks, that's maintaining and building strategic international partnerships, that is cultivating and organizing our information ecosystem for a bioregional learning center, and that is administering funds, managing accounting, and tracking and reporting and monitoring and all of the things that an effective organization needs to be able to scale and manage larger resources. All of this together is our model of territorial governance that we are implementing in Barichara, Colombia. And so that's what I wanted to discuss with you. And like I said, unfortunately, I won't be able to join you live because of internet challenges where we're staying, but I at least want to share this video with you. And what I want to ask you to respond to is simply this. What comes up for you when you hear this story? Are you able to follow it? Does it make sense? Are you curious why it's so complex? Or is it not complex enough? Does it sound realistic and feasible? Does it sound like something that can work? And you probably want to know, how are we doing and how far have we gotten in building it? All of these are things we'll continue to explore in the Barichara Regenerative Finance Lab and in our community in Barichara, Colombia. But for today, I just wanted to share this with you so that you could see what we're working on and so that we could have this conversation. So as always, I look forward to hearing your questions and your comments and creating together in the days ahead. Thank you, and onward, fellow humans.